Commission will serve for the next 4 years. They were due to be sworn in today. The case against controversial South African businessman Vusi Ket Matlala and his 3 co-accused has been postponed to next month at the Alexander Magistrate Court. Matlala and his co-accused are facing charges of attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and money laundering. The alleged crime kingpin was recently linked to Minister of Police Senzo Mchunu in an explosive claim by the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. Lobang Alamu explains.
2 of the 4 accused slightly hid their faces as they walked into the dock. Matlala, his wife, and 2 other accused made a brief appearance at the Alexandra Magistrate Court this morning. Their charges include attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder, all linked to the shooting of Matlala's actress and socialite ex-girlfriend in 2023. Matlala will remain in custody while his wife and 2 others remain on bail.
South Africa's African Transformation Movement has announced its intention to propose a constitutional amendment to rename the country as the Republic of Azania, a move it says is part of a wider national decolonization project. While the idea has sparked ideological support in some quarters, it has also triggered criticism, public skepticism, and wider questions about national priorities. Vuyelwethu Zungulu is parliamentary caucus leader of the African Transformation Movement.
The name is more than just a name. It represents a heritage, an identity, and one would argue even spiritual ties to something. Hence, you find that when most of the African countries that were colonized, immediately when they got their independence, they changed the names they had. However, when it comes to South Africa, the only thing that changed in 1994 was to change from the Union to the Republic. But when it comes to having a name that truly represents the identity of this part of the continent, that has not happened.
Officials in Pakistan say armed men have kidnapped and killed at least 9 bus passengers in the province of Balochistan. The authorities say the gunmen boarded the 2 buses bound for Punjab and abducted the victims. The BBC's Azadeh Moshiri.
Police say a group of armed men blocked a road on the border of the Lorelei and Zub districts and forced some of the passengers off, having checked their identity papers first. They then allowed the coaches to carry on. Balochistan is home to several separatist groups who accuse the central government of exploiting the province's natural resources. In April, the Baloch Liberation Army claimed another deadly attack, the hijacking of a train carrying hundreds of passengers, killing both civilians and military personnel. Though Pakistan's army are yet to comment on the attack, local reports suggest security teams are once again launching an operation in search of any possible hostages.
Lastly, the International Criminal Court at the United Nations Security Council says there are reasonable grounds to believe that war crimes and crimes against humanity are being committed in Western Sudan. Targeted sexual violence against women and girls of specific ethnicities was named as one of the most disturbing findings to emerge from the ICC's probe on crimes committed in Darfur. The deputy prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Nazat Shamin Khan, says sexual violence had been weaponized and people deprived of food and water. Channel Africa News, I am Onele Tsinsi.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Mali I early quarter-final slot. Ghana seeking redemption at the Women's Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco tonight, while the men's Wimbledon semi-finals will take centre stage also tonight. Details of these and other stories coming up at the bottom of the hour.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Oh, thank you to Msibudi Makura with our sports headlines and Onele Ntinti with our news update. It is 12:06 Central African Time and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, an OpenView channel 628 and on www.channelafrica.co.za as well as on the SABC Plus app available on the Apple and Google Play stores. And if you have any questions or stories that you'd like us to highlight, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +27 11 714 4459. And it is that time of the day where we ask you a question on hashtag Africa Update. Ask Nigerians are facing increasing hurdles when obtaining visas in some countries, with some governments citing this as part of their immigration crackdown. Do you think countries should impose such hurdles? And if so, when is it enough? The question is in regards to the hurdles that Nigerians are facing when it comes to obtaining visas in some countries, with some governments citing this as part of their immigration crackdown. Now, do you think countries should impose such hurdles? And if so, when is it enough? Let us know what your views are and your thoughts on this particular question on hashtag Africa Update Us. Now, the SABC Sports brings you Chasing the Sun, a powerful 5-part documentary series about the Springboks, telling the rousing tale of their path to redemption and ultimate World Cup glory in 2019. Starting on the 13th of July at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Tune in every Sunday for the highs, the heartache and the heroics that made rugby history. I'll stream each chapter on SABC Plus anytime, anywhere. No subscription needed. And don't miss Chasing the Sun this Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC2. Be there when history shines.
Africa Update, your daily dose of African insights with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
And the Nigerians are facing growing hurdles in obtaining visas in some countries. Now, visa overstay, poor documentation and national security issues are just some of the top concerns. The United States of America, the United Kingdom, Canada and United Arab Emirates are just some of the countries that have introduced stricter visa restrictions. The restrictions are part of their immigration crackdown. And for more on this, we are joined on the line by our correspondent in Nigeria, Jonathan James Lengon. Jonathan, good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, Lulu. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thanks, and hope you're also good. Now, Jonathan, you and I have spoken about the visa issue when it comes to Nigerians with some of the restrictions that have been put in place and imposed, especially with a country like the United Kingdom, for instance. Now, it seems like it's not only the UK, but a number of countries that are moving in that direction and are citing issues like overstaying, poor documentation, national security issues. How does this affect, obviously it's not only Nigerians, but how does this affect Nigerians?
Well, I mean, since the news filtered in about 3 days ago, you can imagine the conversations in the virtual space has been significantly very hectic. And also local news coverage has been very key. In fact, a lot of people say they didn't realize that Nigerians had such interest in going to America as much as they've come to discover. But then again, I think it's because they've got little knowledge of the full picture of Nigeria's relationship with the United States. So first and foremost, America is one of Nigeria's biggest trade partners. So there's a lot of, but Nigeria has got a huge community in the United States. It's been reputed to say that perhaps the highest number of educated migrants from outside of the United States are Nigerians in the United States. So it tells you how deep and how frequent this has been. Now, this isn't the first time that Nigeria is having issues of immigration, of visas with the United States. Only a few years ago, it had one that was based on an increase in the cost of processing visas. And the United States said they had done that following the principle of reciprocity, which is significantly associated with diplomacy. However, in this particular occasion, the United States statement that followed once they announced this new visa policy, they said it is related to some of those things you mentioned, issues of overstays and issues related to not sharing data. However, curiously and interestingly, yesterday, Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Ambassador Tuga, while granting an interview, said that all of those things that the United States has said are not true. Yep, and it sounds quite shocking. But he says Nigeria has been sharing data and information with the United States. There's no basis for reciprocity. Actually, the real situation is that the United States has been trying to impose upon Nigeria to take refugees or to take on people that have been deported, meant for Venezuela. Venezuelans are meant to be deported back to Venezuela. The United States is trying to twist Nigeria into receiving them, and Nigeria is in no position to take on that, and that is the reality of the situation. So, Lulu,
so now,
that
in terms
changed
of
the entire dynamics.
Yeah. Now, Jonathan, in terms of the talks that Nigeria is having with the U.S. now, now you highlight something that's very key that we have been seeing happening with the U.S. Sending refugees to different countries, Rwanda being a case in point. Now, what sort of solutions is Nigeria putting forward with regards to the issue of the documentation, as you say, with the Foreign Affairs Minister saying this is not true, but what solutions are being put in place? And is the U.S. receptive to this? Or is it a case of take these people from Venezuela or, then this is it?
I mean, as a diplomatic scholar myself, there's what is often referred to as diplomatic shakedown. And it is generally believed from some of the foreign affairs professionals I've spoken with in the last 2 days, their position is this is at first a diplomatic shakedown. The dexterity with which Nigeria is able to handle it will determine how it escalates or not. But the general belief is that given the U.S. interest in Nigeria, given Nigerians who are in diaspora in America, there's a lot of behind the scenes engagement that is happening, and a lot more will happen. And given also that this isn't the first time this has come about, it is generally believed that the situation is going to be ameliorated, is going to abate. And Nigeria says it is sharing the data it needs to share with the U.S., and it is open to do more if that is required. But this isn't the case on this occasion.
Now, the UAE also now imposing restrictions for Nigerian travelers. What's the case there? Canada is also a country that also has come up. We've discussed the UK a number of times. And, what's happening? Why is there a blockade on Nigerians specifically?
I think the phrase would probably be these Nigerians, really. These Nigerians. What is it with them? But with each case, while one can be tempted to put all of these situations into one basket, when you look deeply, with each case, there is a peculiarity. Now, one thing that cannot be denied is Nigerians are significantly a very highly migrant people.
Yeah.
And you find Nigerians in a lot of places. In the case of the UAE, for instance, it was many chapters that scaled up and snowballed into one.
Yeah.
There was the issue of BASA, the bilateral air service agreement that Nigeria said the UAE wasn't honoring, and following COVID.
Well, Jonathan, because of time,
yeah.
we are going to have to leave it here for today, but I'd like us to take it up at a later time and just unpack this even more, because seemingly there's, as you say, there are bigger issues at play here. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you, Lulu.
That's our correspondent in Nigeria, Jonathan James Leangon, joining us on the line.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
South Africa's judiciary says it is concerned over the allegations uttered by KwaZulu-Natal Province Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi that there is a collusion between the judiciary and criminals. Now, the judiciary says the claims are damaging to the public confidence in the independence and integrity of the courts. And for more on this, we are joined on the line by Judge President Kagni Musi. Judge President, good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon to you and to your listeners.
Now, the Office of the Chief Justice has requested Commissioner Mkhwanazi to furnish evidence supporting his allegations. How seriously is the office taking these allegations?
Well, we are taking it very seriously. You must remember that the currency of the judiciary is the integrity and the public confidence in the judiciary. People must be confident that when they take their disputes or complaints to our courts, that those complaints will be dealt with without fear, favor, or prejudice. And when any person makes allegations against the judiciary pertaining to corruption or collusion, that trust is eroded. And that is what we want to prevent, and we thought the best way of doing it is to seek the facts, if any.
JP, with regards to these allegations, what steps will be taken? If, say, the office, or rather the Chief Justice Office decides on a way forward with these allegations, what sort of steps are in mind, depending obviously on what the Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi says and brings forward?
Well, if there's no factual basis for the allegations, we would expect an apology. If there is a factual basis, we would expect him or any person that has the information to go, if it exposes criminal conduct, to go to the police, open a criminal charge, and if it is a question of a breach of our code of conduct, then the Judicial Service Commission is there. There's a complaints mechanism at the Judicial Service Commission level. If it is something that pertains to the lower court judiciary, in other words, a magistrate in the district court or a magistrate in the regional court, then the Magistrates Commission also has a complaints mechanism similar to that of the JSC. Our codes of conduct are also similar.
And are there any time frames with regards to the Commissioner Mkhwanazi's presentation of the facts or allegations to be substantiated?
Well, at this stage, not. But what we did is simultaneously with the query to Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi, we also wrote to the National Commissioner of the South African Police Services. We hope that they will deal with this issue as a matter of urgency, especially in light of the fact that the President might touch on these things on Sunday. We don't know. And if we can get it, the sooner the better.
Well, JP, thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update. That was Judge President Kagni Musi joining us on the line. It is 21 after 12 Central African Time.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Controversial tender mogul of Vusumuzi Kat Matlala has appeared in South Africa's Alexandra Magistrates Court. He faces charges of attempted murder and conspiracy to commit murder linked to a 2023 hit attempt on his ex-girlfriend, actress Tebogo Tobejane. Matlala recently ditched his bail bid and remains in custody. His wife, Tsakani, who is out on bail, also faces the same charges. The couple's court appearance comes amid an ongoing corruption probe into a cancelled police tender. And for more on this, we are joined by News 24 investigative journalist Jeff Wicks, who has written extensively about the case. Jeff, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Now, Jeff, can you provide insight into how the attempted murder charges intersect with Matlala's broader tender-related scandals?
So, absolutely. So, as regards the tender and now the case before court, the only intersection really is the fact that they are happening at the same time. We know that the attempted assassination of Teboko Tobajane happened 2 years ago at the end of 2023, and that was a cold case which was revived by elements of this political killings task team, which is now contentious and in the spotlight. But issues surrounding his tender have been simmering and now boiling for months. He was awarded the tender midway through last year. Our reportage on that started in December. And through sustained pressure and exposés, that tender was eventually cancelled in April because there was a litany of red flags in the awarding of that. And we know this because of an internal audit that set it out.
Now, with this internal audit, we've seen, this particular tender, and we've seen a number of people coming out into the media space and being interviewed and speaking, extensively of how they don't have any issues with the highlights that have been brought forward with their involvement in the processes that were taken during the decisions on this tender. Do you think that there's more to come?
Oh, certainly. I mean, we know that the award of the tender and everyone who had a hand in awarding it is now under investigation by the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption. They registered a criminal probe shortly before the tender was cancelled. So we now have an independent body that is going to be probing the cut and thrust of that tender right down to the very paper it was written on. And given that there were so many irregularities in that award, I suspect that we will see a lot more heads rolling in terms of those who had a hand in gifting this tender to a company which was run from a Boksburg strip mall. You know, we have to understand the scale of this tender. It's to provide health services to 180,000 police officers over a 3-year period. And Vusi Muzi Matlala's company was only 5 years old when it won the tender. It never declared an annual income of more than 100,000 Rand in its entire existence. And lo and behold, it wins this nearly R500 million tender award.
And just going to your article, there's mention of Matlala's ties to high-ranking officials, including former Police Minister Bheki Cele, the current Police Minister Senzo Mchunu as well. How significant are these connections in understanding the broader network of influence Matlala allegedly cultivated, and also the issue of him bankrolling a Cape Town trip for a crime intelligence colonel, and then the text messages that were also uncovered with the role of politically connected middleman Opa Brown Mokgotsi, whom the current Minister of Police had said he just knew him as a political person, an ANC member, and it has come out that they actually do know each other.
Well, I think what's important to remember is that all of these supposed connections speak to Matlala's reach and his attempt to influence political circles for financial gain. We know from our own investigation that the ANC Gala Dinner Junket trip, which was attended by that high-ranking crime intelligence officer, was paid for by Matlala in an effort to secure further tenders. That was the discussion between himself and Brown. Then we look further and say, well, did he have direct access to Police Minister Senzo Mchunu? Because if he did, that's incredibly problematic. There's no direct evidence of that at this stage. But what is cause for concern is his obvious access to Mchunu's predecessor, Bheki Cele. We know from our own reportage that Bheki Cele had the run of one of Matlala's penthouse apartments when he needed it. He stayed there on more than one occasion. And then that becomes suspicious when you consider that the entire tender that he's in the news for was adjudicated while Bheki Cele was police minister.
Now, Jeff, I'd like to know where you were. Were you watching when Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi just came on our screens and made this public knowledge of the allegations that of everything that was happening and how it all unfolded?
I was out walking my dogs and my phone started bursting on fire, so I had to come and watch it. So I did watch the briefing, and, you know, it's an unprecedented moment in our democratic dispensation. We've got a well-respected, very popular high-ranking head of the police in KwaZulu-Natal openly declaring that he will be investigating the police minister and making shocking allegations about the intersection between politics and the underworld, which we know exists. But in this case, it's even more damning because South Africans deal with rampant issues of crime and a dysfunctional police force. It's perennially like that. So this really deepens the mire and destabilizes the organization even further.
And just the other day, Matlala was recently caught with a cell phone in his cell at the Kgosi Mampuru prison, leading to his transfer to CMAX section. What does this suggest, or what does this incident suggest about his ability to maintain influence or connections even while in custody?
Well, I mean, you've set it out. Absolutely. It tells us that he's got both access to money inside jail, and it tells us that he's got access to influence, because contraband like that is only smuggled in one way. What it's also done for him is to secure him another criminal charge of a contravention of the Correctional Services Act. So the woes for Mr. Matlala are mounting. We also heard from Port this morning that he's under investigation for 2 other cases. So this is definitely not the last we'll see of him.
And just seeing the visuals on our television screens of the court in Alexandra this morning, just outside the court, the presence of police and security, is that an indication of how big of a challenge this case is likely to be, or these cases?
Yeah, certainly. I think the majority of the media cohort is only paying attention now, but we've been covering these criminal cases since midway through last year, and there's been a consistent police presence because of the danger and threats the investigating officer has received. You know, at one stage there was a 1 million rand bounty out on the investigating officer's head. So the security concerns remain, and that also tells us why none of the lawyers involved in this matter want their faces shown. This is a very sensitive case, and the stakes are extremely high.
And now, Jeff, just in wrapping up, with this parliamentary inquiry and the criminal investigation underway, what are the potential implications of your findings for accountability within the South African police services and the broader South African political landscape?
Well, I think our investigation is at the center of the scandal. It certainly hasn't propelled it as much as the General Mkhwanazi did on Sunday with his claims. But, you know, we've taken care over months to investigate this. Our investigation continues. And what the South African public needs and deserves is accountability and transparency. We need to understand exactly why our police service is the way it is. And in order for that to happen, this parliamentary inquiry is incredibly important, because it then takes all of that and allows most of it to be in public view.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update. We'll leave it there for today. That was News 24 investigative journalist Jeff Wicks joining us on the line. It is 12:30 Central African time, and our news headlines up next with Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Kenya's President William Ruto has approved a new chairperson and commissioners to head the Elections Commission. This is contained in a legal notice filling positions of critical influence in a country with a long history of contentious polls. South Africa's Interpol Crimes Ambassador Andy Mashaile has called on President Cyril Ramaphosa to consider the services of a strong team to look into the allegations raised by the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. Mkhwanazi has accused Police Minister Senzo Mchunu of being in constant contact with individuals linked to criminal activities. And Nigeria's foreign ministry says the country will not bow to pressure from the Trump administration to accept Venezuelan deportees from the U.S. This following a visa curbs and threats of tariff hikes. Channel Africa News, I'm Onele Nzinzi.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Onele. We'll say good afternoon to Msibudi Makura with our sports update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. A very good afternoon from the sports desk. So Banyana head coach Dr. Desiree Ellis says the team must follow the game plan to secure a win in their second Women's Africa Cup of Nations group stage clash against Tanzania tonight. The defending champions will look to maintain their winning momentum coming into this clash as they are fresh from a 2-0 victory over Ghana. Speaking at a pre-match presser yesterday, Ellis says their previous record against the Twiga Stars does not count at this point in time, as anything is possible in football.
We need to make sure that, again, we don't concede, because we are going to create opportunities and then take those opportunities, and we need to be a lot more in the attacking third when we are there to take the chances, because we had a couple of chances against Ghana that could have sealed the game, and then they hit the crossbar after that, so we could have been way out of distance. So we've got to make sure that we do that, because yes, defenses win you matches, but goals also win your matches. So we got to make sure of that important thing. Yes, we analyze like they're going to analyze us, but we also concentrate a lot more on what we need to do to make sure that we get those things right.
Tanzania is also one of the lowest ranked African teams in this year's competition, and this serves as they return to the continental showpiece for a second time since 2010. Ellis says every match is important and there is no room for to underestimate any of the teams at this year's tournament.
You underestimate the team at your own peril. You go step onto that field and you're saying it's 11v11, let's take our chances, let's be focused, let's be organised at the back and get the result that we want. But you're playing against an opponent that has analysed you as well, and people forget that. And sometimes when a goal gets scored, people are saying, oh, what a silly goal. But they've analysed. They found an opening there. You're not playing against someone who's just stepped onto the field. Teams think we are coming here because we're defending champions. We're coming here because we're a contender. A contender like every other team that's here, every other country that's here, that has that ambition of winning the WAFCON. We also have that ambition.
Meanwhile, that game, by the way, between South Africa as well as Tanzania will kick off at 9 p.m. Central African time. But before that game, there will be another game in Group C. It's a West African derby between Ghana as well as Mali, draped in a must-win matchup, coating with a kick-off for this game at 6 p.m. Central African time to be played at the Bakan Stadium. Now, the Black Queens of Ghana find themselves between a rock and a hard place this after losing their opener 2-0 against the defending champions South Africa on Monday. So against Mali, they face a team that is efficient even when they do not have much of the ball possession. So with the experience of the forwards, the Ghanaian defence have their work cut out for them ahead of today's match in a must-win encounter for both sides. Mali, by the way, having defeated Tanzania 1-0 in their other group game. So South Africa as well as Mali on the same number of points, but South Africa higher on that table in the first position due to more goals having been scored in that game against Ghana just on Monday. Well, former guest as well as FIFA referee Victor Hlungwane says the VAR training at PSL referee workshop says there is no referee workshop when it comes to the VAR. Hlungwane says despite the promise of VAR ahead of the 2025-2026 season, the respected referee says there has been no communication around this possibility to the match officials, as from next week betrees will attend workshops to brush up on the updated rules as well as new innovations before the 2025-2026 Betway Premiership season is set to get underway in August. But the one technology the football fraternity is waiting for is the introduction of the video assistant referee. Hlungwane suggests that the deadline to equip match officials to ready to be able to operate the system has already passed.
There is no equipment. The last thing we heard about VAR is there was a tender that went out to try and get the material for us to can start. But at the moment, the material has not arrived. Who was awarded the tender, we don't even know. But until such time that SAFA announces that such a person has been awarded the tender, then we can say something. And to train referees for VAR, you don't take 1 week. So pre-season is 1 week. But to train referees for VAR, it can be 1 week, where we'll say 1 week, then we're starting with VAR.
And finally, Springbok women's star Nadine Roos is back in the lineup for the Canada clash tomorrow. Coach Swayze de Bruin made several changes to the Springbok women's side to play Canada in the second test match in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape province on Saturday. De Bruin opted to move both Behandri Dolph as well as Eloise Webb from the bench in the starting team, with Dolph, who hails from in the Eastern Cape, starting at full-back, and Webb from the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium from the East London region, also running out at fly-half for the clash. Now, two more familiar players with the roads against Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium, Azeze Hele, who's also from the Eastern Cape Province, as well as Sanisiwe Charlie, also from the Eastern Cape Province, have retained the places in the starting team that lost 50-20 to the same opponent in Pretoria just last Saturday. And that's a wrap from the sports desk at the SAWA. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibu D. Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Oh, thank you, Tim Subudi Makura, with our sports updates. And we say good afternoon to Chandu Goligege with our business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu, and good afternoon. South Africa's Electricity Minister, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, has outlined his department's priority of electrifying households that still remain without power 31 years into the country's democratic dispensation. Following the tabling of his department's budget vote in Parliament yesterday, Ramokgopa said unelectrified households, particularly in areas including informal settlements, deep rural areas and newly formed housing developments, now account for 1.6 million households.
This has to do with the compromised state of reticulation and distribution infrastructure in municipalities. We have chosen that we will not fold our arms. We are going to make an intervention, working including in ESCOM areas to ensure that we refurbish, replenish, maintain those assets, get people back online.
A Malian military helicopter has airlifted gold from the Barrick-owned Lulu Gaboo complex days after a Reuters report that a court-appointed administrator planned to sell the size bullion to finance operations. A Bamako court last month appointed a provisional administrator to restart operations at the West African country's largest gold mining site, nearly 6 months after Barrick Mining suspended them amid tense negotiations over the implementation of a new mining code. Barrick says it was forced to suspend operations in mid-January after Mali's military-led government blocked its exports for 2 months, detained some of its executives and seized 3 tons of bullion. Egypt's central bank has kept key interest rates unchanged on posing a trend of rate reductions despite inflation rates easing. The bank's Monetary Policy Committee held the overnight deposit rate at 24% and the lending rate at 25%. Egypt's headline inflation dropped to 14.9% in June from 16.8% in May after peaking at 38% in September 2023. In other news, the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration says it has opened a recall query covering 27,816 of Sweden-based EV maker Polestar's Polestar 2 vehicles over a loss of rear view camera image. A call query is an investigation opened by safety regulators when a remedy to solve an issue appears inadequate. The NHTSA says Polestar had in June last year recalled certain 2021 to 2024 Polestar 2 vehicles over issues with a rear view camera relating to limited visualization, becoming inoperable or incorrect functioning in reverse gear. Demand for Polestar's EVs has been weighed down in several markets by high interest rates, inflation, and availability of more affordable hybrid or gas-powered options. Oil prices rose after U.S. President Donald Trump said he would make an announcement regarding Russia, raising the prospect of more sanctions on the major oil producer, while tariff concern and rising OPEC Plus output kept gains. Brent crude futures were up 44 U.S. cents, or 0.64% at 69.8 US dollars a barrel. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude ticked up 52 cents, or 0.78% to $67.9 a barrel. Let's have a look at financial indicators at this hour. $1 in Nigeria is at 1,000 naira 527, Botswana 13 pula 19, Kenya the dollar is at 128 shilling 478, Zambia 23 kwacha 72. BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is at 5 real 56. Russia 77 ruble 16, India 85 rupee 67, China 71.17, South Africa 17 rand 75 cents. $1 is 73 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Commodities, gold is at $3,332, platinum at $1,358 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil $68.70 a barrel. That is all for now. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Chanduko Ligenge.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
Oh, thank you to Chanduko Ligege with our business news. It is 12:43 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Mzansi, this is more than just a game. It's a celebration of history. 30 years ago, the Springboks united our nation with that iconic Rugby World Cup victory, and now the mighty Boks are back. Don't miss South Africa versus Italy in the 30th anniversary commemoration match this Saturday, the 12th of July at 4 p.m. Central African time. Now, watch it live on SABC2 or stream it anywhere on the SABC Plus app. Download the SABC Plus app today on iOS and Android or your smart TV. Switch to stream, no subscription. SABC Sports, for the love of the game.
Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update. Only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Our new data from UNICEF shows a 46% increase in the number of children being treated for severe acute malnutrition in Sudan. In North Darfur, more than 40,000 children were admitted for treatment in the first 5 months of the year, double the number of the same period last year. And for more on this, we are joined on the line by Ava Hines, Chief Advocacy and Communication from UNICEF Sudan. Ava, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon. It's good to be here.
Now, the data shows that there has been a surge across Sudan's 5 Darfur states. Which ones are they, and how bad is the issue of malnutrition in children?
Well, it is very bad at the moment, and that's why we are ringing the alarm bell very loudly at the moment. There are 5 states in the Darfurs, and the situation is particularly bad in those areas that are cut off from humanitarian aid. So we are talking about Al Bashar. It's a city. It's the one of the big cities within the Darfur states. It's the capital of North Darfur, where the situation is particularly alarming. And the city is surrounded by large camps for the internally displaced. So these camps, I can give you a couple of examples. A camp called Zamzam that a number of people do know from news reporting. These have been cut off from aid for months now. So children and families living in these places have had barely no access to clean water, to food, or any type of items that they would need or people would get in other places so easily. And that has then deteriorated children's health as well as their nutritional status. And as the fighting continues very heavily in these places, many have also been forced to flee. and trekked for days in scorching heat. And then when they finally reach a place that's more safe, not necessarily completely safe, but safer than the place that they left, then they start receiving services. And this is where we see the numbers going up and mothers and fathers seeking support for treating malnutrition.
You warned of urgent action that needs to be taken. What action are you calling for?
The critical thing here is that we need access. We need access to reach these children where they are. And that's the biggest obstacle now. And this is why we are seeing these big rates. And we do have supplies pre-positioned not too far from, for example, Al Fasher city. So we are ready to go, but we need to be able to get there. We need to be able to get there safely. We need to be able to get there sustainably, the same way as then these families need to be able to access these services safely. So it's access in many different ways.
Earlier on, you touched on collapsing healthcare services. There's also the crisis of a cholera outbreak and measles. Take us through that and how you're dealing with it currently.
Absolutely. This is a combined effect. So children that are malnourished, they are very vulnerable to diseases. And in a place like Sudan, where the conflict continues, it's now more than 2 years on. So the healthcare system is in very dire straits at the moment. Many of the hospitals, the health centers have been damaged or completely destroyed during the fighting. There's very limited amounts of medicine, health supplies, vaccines in many places. And that means that children don't have this protective shield for childhood diseases that they do have in many other places. And that's when disease outbreaks like cholera then takes hold. And we've seen the cholera outbreak that started officially last year in August, that it's spiking, that the caseload is particularly high in those areas where the fighting is very close by, where it is difficult to access services. And then these two things combined, the disease outbreaks, whether we talk about cholera, measles, malaria, and then those combined with malnutrition, it's a deadly threat to children. The good news is that if we can reach these children and if we can reach them in time, we can help their health and we can help them recover.
Now, with the U.S. cutting aid, how is this hampering your efforts in Sudan?
Well, the cuts are, of course, hampering our ability to reach all the children in need. And we already saw prior to these cuts that the needs were a lot higher than our funding. We saw that last year, and this year alone, if we are looking at the needs have grown by 20%. So there's a larger number of people in need, and the funding is not keeping up with that level of the needs. So it's a very difficult equation to make.
Well, Ava, it's been a pleasure. We'll have to leave it there for today. Thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you very much.
That's Ava Hines, Chief Advocacy and Communication from UNICEF Sudan, joining us on the line.
We are on Open Views Audio Bouquet, Channel 628.
A new Oxfam report has shed light on the alarming levels of wealth inequality in Africa. Now, according to the findings, just 4 of the continent's richest billionaires now hold more wealth than half of Africa's population. That's around 750 million people. The report, titled Africa's Inequality Crisis and the Rise of the Super Rich, was released ahead of the African Union's mid-year coordination meeting in Malabo, Equatorial Guinea. Channel Africa's Lebogang Mabange has more.
Oxfam says the growing divide between rich and poor is not just a numbers game, it's a symptom of systemic policy failure that's fueling a moral crisis across the continent. Oxfam's Africa Director Fatinzi Hassane says the situation is dire.
Inequality in Africa is the result of a policy failure. It's the embodiment of a moral crisis. Right now, there are millions of fellow Africans struggling with hunger, with unemployment, and with the impact of climate change. Meanwhile, there's a small elite that continues to grow richer and more powerful and protected from fair taxation.
She warns that this crisis is tearing at the social fabric of African societies and pushing many further into despair.
This growing gap is tearing down the fabric of our societies, holding back progress and breeding instability. We often say that numbers do not lie, and they don't. This is why we like numbers. But what we should not forget is that behind these depressing numbers, these depressing statistics, are real people living through the pain and suffering caused by systemic failure.
She says behind every statistic are real people, families affected by poverty, inadequate healthcare, and climate-related disasters. Nziasane paints a vivid picture.
As Oxfam and as Africans, we see this every day. It's in the tears and the heartbreak of that woman who loses her baby just because she could not afford a simple medical procedure in a government hospital. It's in the painful look of a woman and of a child who queue for food rations after a deadly flood. It's everywhere.
Workers who carry the weight of extended families and entire communities say the inequality crisis affects them most directly. Akato Odigi, General Secretary of the African Regional Organization of the International Trade Union Confederation, says workers fully support Oxfam's call for action.
This road of trying to bring the inequality situation to bear for everyone to see, understand, and to be able to take action on the part of Oxfam is an initiative that African workers welcome, which is why for us, there have never been an hesitation on our part to join or to collaborate in this effort.
For many workers, the pressure is not just financial, it's emotional and psychological as they support multiple dependents with little relief in sight. Odigi explains.
African workers know what it means for people to live in misery, in poverty, in hardship. We say it on our continent that an average worker, one worker, is responsible for a minimum of 6 dependents that are not working. And so for this worker, he or she understands what striving to fight off poverty means every day. And that for this worker, mental health challenges are huge because he or she is always thinking about the dependent in the family and those in the communities, how they should feel.
Oxfam is urging African governments and institutions to take bold steps, including taxing the super rich and increasing funding for public services to reverse what it calls a growing inequality emergency. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África, com Remo Samo e João Yabalá.
O surto da cólera em Angola tem causado grande preocupação, afetando já mais de metade das províncias do país. E, simultaneamente, a Agência dos Estados Unidos para o Desenvolvimento Internacional, USAID, um dos maiores doadores mundiais de assistência humanitária, decidiu não priorizar os países com maior incidência de malária. Para discutirmos as causas do alastramento da cólera em Angola e os impactos dessa decisão da USAID, convidamos o Dr. Jeremias Agostinho, médico e mestre em saúde pública, para partilhar a sua visão sobre o tema.
A doença, nesse momento, representa o maior risco de saúde pública que nós temos. Nos últimos anos, a nossa preocupação esteve sempre centrado com os casos de malária, os casos de tuberculose e também de infecção por VIH-Sida. A forma como, em pouco menos de 2 meses, os casos de cólera vêm aumentando, acaba por representar, nessa altura, um dos maiores desafios que o país tem. É expectável que, nesta fase, o número de casos venha a aumentar.
De segunda a sexta-feira, das 20 às 21 horas locais, este é o Caleidoscópio do Canal África.
We are on OpenView's audio bouquet. Channel 628. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
Today on #Africa Updates asks, Nigerians are facing increasing hurdles when obtaining visas in some countries. with some governments citing this as part of their immigration crackdown. Now, do you think countries should impose such hurdles? And if so, when is it enough? Let us know what your thoughts and your views are on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 as 406 9126 hashtag Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in. And that is the question. Do you think countries should impose such hurdles? And if so, when is it enough? Hashtag Africa Update asks.
Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K,
or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Tamo ndi
Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. And join the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Channel Africa and you have got something in common. The thirst for knowledge. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Well, it is that time of the day, and we say happy Friday and good afternoon to Tebohole Kuleni. How are you today?
I am boiling hot is what I am right now at the moment. And wearing black didn't help at all. Because you see now the sun, now the heat, everything is just coming together.
No, the sun is shining.
Yes.
It's great, but it's still, there's a bit of a chill in the air. It is still nippy. It's cold outside. Yes. Just our studio is really, really nice and warm.
We've got a hot lineup for you this afternoon. On the upside, our first conversation is about the Global Entrepreneurship Summit. We are joined by Sianda Kelvin Ntenga. It's an activation summit which will officially lead to the main event, which will take place in Ghana, and it's about boosting entrepreneurship in South Africa, in Africa, so we can reduce the high unemployment rate on the continent, especially South Africa. And then we get into conversation with TBO, musical artist from South Africa. He talks new music. His song is called Sono Sami, featuring the lovely, the amazing Mahu. He'll be joining us on the line this afternoon to tell us more about the song. And then we've got our Friday mix. As always, every Friday we have a DJ mix. So it's going to be music, entrepreneurship, and just an amazing creative artist by the name of TBO. That's all coming up on the upside this afternoon.
That's coming up at the top of the hour with Tebohole Kuleni and Matsiko Musito. Do stay tuned for that exciting show that is coming up. And continue with us on our social media platforms, and that's where we leave it as Africa Update. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to our producer Tracy Bumgard, our technical operator Nanda Koza, and social media Nzako Mashaba. It's been a great Friday and a great week. Have a good weekend, and let's do this again on Monday. Bye-bye.
SABC News. The African perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Taking a look at your latest news this hour. Kenyan President William Ruto has approved a new chairperson and the commissioners to head the Elections Commission. This is contained in a legal notice filing of positions of critical influence in a country with a long history of contentious polls. The East African nation's next general elections will be held in 2027, but Ruto is already under pressure from street protests led by young Kenyans dissatisfied with the high living costs, corruption and police brutality. The new chairperson and 6 commissioners appointed by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission will serve for the next 4 years. They were due to be sworn in today. South Africa's Interpol Crimes Ambassador Andy Mashaile has called on President Cyril Ramaphosa to consider the services of a strong legal team to look into the allegations raised by the KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi. Mkhwanazi accused Police Minister Senzo Mchunu of being in constant contact with individuals linked to criminal activities. He also accused some senior police officials of being involved in corruption. Ramaphosa will on Sunday night address the nation on developments arising from statements made by Mkhwanazi. Mashaile says this is a very sensitive matter.
Invite retired judge or retired judges or some lawyers so that they can give a hearing to all the sides that are involved.